and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the Necromancer. I realized that since I want to finish all the player's handbook stuff before I move on to Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide and Xanatars and all those, that I really need to get my button gear. I think I've only covered one wizard subclass so far. So today we're going to be looking at Necromancer. I did do a video once about the summoner archetype where we talked about like conjurers and necromancers, and we talked about druids and stuff like that, using a lot of summoned creatures to do your bidding. So I'll probably try to remember to put a link to that in this video description or in the comment section, one or the other. But I do think that there's a lot of other ways you can play a necromancer as well. And one good thing about wizards is that because you have so many spells known, and you can always add more scrolls to your spell book, that there's no reason you can't be the minion master and also incorporate a bunch of these other roles as well. There's nothing saying you have to be one or the other when it comes to wizards. You have so much flexibility and so many like spells at your fingertips. So we'll look at some more that more towards the end. First, I wanted to go over the Necromancer abilities. We're just going to look at the ones for the subclass. At level 2, you get Grim Harvest. If you do lethal damage to a creature with one of your spells of first or higher level, you regain double the hit points of the spell level 3 times if it's a Necromancer spell. So if you killed something with a 3rd level Necromancer spell, you're going to regain 9 hit points. If you used a 3rd level spell, like say a lightning bolt, then you're only going to regain 6 hit points. Now, I used to think this ability was actually really worthless. I'm still not a huge fan of it, but in my last campaign, my buddy Troy played a Necromancer all the way from 1 to 20, and this ability literally stopped him from dying multiple times in the campaign. One especially early on, they had a huge fight. It was down to the wire. Almost every party member was down to like only a handful of hit points. A couple people went down and got revived with healing spells or with lay hands, but they used all of that and had nothing left. It was a super close fight. And the only reason Troy didn't go down is because he kept killing off all these minion archer guys, and it would take him like, he'd kill like one round, get 3 hit points, kill one the next round, get another 3, kill one the next round, then he'd get shot by an archer and take like 8 damage and be back to like 3 hit points. And then he'd start killing some more, he'd get back to like 7 or 8 hit points, get hit for 6. It was actually pretty funny the way it worked out. So I'm not going to say the ability is absolutely worthless. It does have moments where it can really, really shine, and it can save your life in a pinch. But I'd be a lot happier with this ability if it was temporary hit points. Because in order to use this, you already have to be wounded, and you already have to be missing hit points. Also, you know, I mean, it's nice that you get 3 times the amount back with a Necromancer spell, but in general, I'm not a big fan of direct damage spells anyways. You know, if I use like a Finger of Death, I regain 21 hit points. That's a good chunk of hit points, but I'm looking at a 7th level spell for that, you know? If my main goal was to heal myself, there's more efficient ways to do it. And if my main goal was to, you know, remove one of the enemies from the battlefield, Finger of Death against somebody who's a legendary save or even magic resistance isn't always your best bet. But, you know, Finger of Death can create more skeletons and zombies and whatnot, so it's not a complete loss. At level 6, Undead Thralls. It's too bad you didn't get this ability at 5, but I understand they wanted to keep it consistent. You're going to get the Undead spell for free. You could have picked this at 5, but, you know, you'll get it for free at 6. That's fine. But you also get to select an extra corpse if you're raising zombies, or a pile of bones if you're doing skeletons. So that's actually a pretty nice perk. You get an extra undead when you cast it, and their hit point maximum is increased by your wizard level, which is pretty significant. Like, skeletons and zombies don't have a lot of hit points. So even by level 6, when you get this ability, adding an extra 6 hit points to skeletons is pretty significant. That's like almost 50% more health, you know, and so it's pretty good. And you get to add your proficiency bonus to their damage. So this is what kind of lets them scale, at least somewhat. I mean, they don't scale extremely well, but it's, you know, it could be worse. If you had, like, say, 10 undead, and they all managed to hit in 1 round, your 10 skeletons or whatever are going to do 60 extra damage just from your proficiency bonus. that's a large chunk of bonus damage on top of the damage they're already doing. So I don't think that this ability is bad by any means. I actually think it's quite excellent. And when most people play a Necromancer, it's really because they want to have that undead army, and these are the kind of abilities that they're really looking for. At level 10, you're going to get resistance to necrotic damage. It's not a bad ability. A lot of undead do necrotic damage. Some other things do as well. Could be worse. Your hit point maximum can't be reduced. This is pretty nice because a lot of those effects can be really debilitating. And we're going to talk about one specific use for that ability in a moment. Level 14, Command Undead. As an action, you can command an undead within 60 feet of you. It has to make a charisma saving throw versus your spell save DC. It gets advantage if its intelligence is 8 or higher, and if its intelligence is 12 or higher, it gets to repeat this saving throw every single hour. Now, that all sounds like it's probably very limiting, and this ability might not be that good. But, as we found out in my campaign, when Troy played as Necromancer, this ability is amazing. It is ridiculous. Troy was able to take control of a CR 14 undead at one point, the Herald of Undeath from the Creature Codex, and that thing was his servant for a long time. It was very powerful in hand-to-hand combat, had, I think, close to 200 hit points. It was pretty durable, and its intelligence was only 8, so since it failed that initial saving throw, it could never make another saving throw. And this is one thing that we have to understand. By the time you're level 14, your spell save difficulty is going to be very high. I mean, you're looking at, let's say, assuming you have 20 intelligence, that's a +5. You're going to have another +6 from your proficiency bonus. So that's 11 more. So, I mean, at minimum, you're looking at like a DC 19 saving throw. But if you have something like, say, a Robe of the Archmagi that's going to up your spell save DC or anything else along those lines, you can start pushing it to 20 or 21. A lot of undead do not have a good charisma saving throw. So it becomes pretty easy to take control of undead as long as they do not have a legendary resist. And so this is one thing that Troy discovered very quickly. You don't use this ability on, like, the Lich. You use it on the Lich's giant powerful minion made of bones that it used to try to, you know, occupy your party. You use it on that thing instead, because it probably has a terrible spell save DC, and it may not have 8 or higher intelligence either, so you can just keep that thing forever, maybe. And the fact that you just get this until you decide to, you know, replace it or whatever, makes it an amazing ability. So, you know, you still might want to wander through town with this undead thing following you around, but, you know, you could use Seeming or some other spell like that to try to impersonate something. There are things you can do. You can just leave it in your demi-plane, you know, whatever. So those cover the basic Necromancer abilities. And like I said, I do have like 3 other ideas for how to be a Necromancer. Besides the Minion Master. The Minion Master, it's pretty straightforward. You can take things like Animate Dead. You're going to take Dance Macabre, Create Undead, those types of spells. You're going to build your undead army. Maybe you're going to have, you know, once you get like 15th level, you can get demi-plane. You can throw extra gear in your demi-plane, so when you animate your undead, you arm them all with magical weapons or whatever else you want to do. You can get pretty crazy with this kind of stuff. You can have your undead army in your demi-plane, so that way you don't have to bring them around through town with you. You go to the dungeon, you open your demi-plane, you bring your undead out, and you're good to go. That kind of playstyle can be a lot of fun. But like I said, I don't think it's the only thing you can do with your Necromancer. And one of the roles I wanted to look at was the idea of the Speaker with the Dead. That kind of like seance type of communing with those who died to gain information from the underworld. Kind of like Odysseus going into the underworld to learn the secrets of the dead. And I kind of like that idea. It has a lot of like mythology to it, and I think like the whole idea of conducting a seance in your game could be kind of spooky and neat. So you're going to take spells like Speak with Dead, Contact Other Plane, Clairvoyance would be decent, Legend Lore, I think. I'd even consider spells like Soul Cage and Magic Jar to be pretty good. I think that there's, you know, some real good potential on those things. Planar binding, not so much, but I think you could maybe fit it in if you kind of want to just be like, hey, why limit myself to undead? Maybe I'll, control other stuff as well. And I think that can be a neat role for your character to fill. And like I said, it doesn't mean you still can't have your undead army. There's nothing stopping you from doing both. You're a wizard. Do whatever you want. Another one is kind of like that homunculus creator. I kind of got this idea from Dr. Frankenstein, stitching all the dead bodies together to make his monster. And you can use things like this is more of a high level build, but spells like Simulacrum and Clone really go along well with this. The Create Homunculus spell from Xanathar's. And I know that spell gets a lot of hate because basically it's like a 5th level version of Find Familiar. So, when Find Familiar is 1st and Create Homunculus is 5th, that's not quite so great. And it does reduce your hit point maximum when you do it. But you're a Necromancer, so your hit point maximum can't be reduced as long as you're 10th or higher level. So, you're all good on that front. You don't have to worry about it. But I do think that the idea of creating these kind of undead servants and minions and stuff, as well as animating undead servants and minions, is kind of just, neat and thematic. And in this one, I really like spells like Soul Cage and Magic Jar as methods of kind of, being that trap the soul or create things and take, spirits from one place and put them into another. That type of rule I think is just kind of cool. So there's no reason you can't take those kind of spells with this kind of guy as well. And I think that there'd be a lot of cool role-playing reasons to do this kind of stuff too, right? You don't have to be the I'm evil necromancer who's going to take over the world type. And not that there's anything wrong with that. That is perfectly fine. But, maybe you just wanted to learn the secrets of the dead. Maybe you lost a loved one when you were a child. And, now you just want to understand what death is and what it means and stuff. But you're not a cleric, you're a wizard, so you take a wizardly route towards learning that kind of stuff. That could be an interesting character. Maybe you just want to, help save people and bring the dead back to, reunite them with other people. That's perfectly fine. I like the idea of, like I said, like the Undead Oracle, somebody who's just seeking for knowledge. And their quest to understand and master death is just, to them, seen as one of the ultimate forms of gaining knowledge. And I think you could have a lot of characters that fit into that vein. In the campaign I just ran, like I said, Troy ran a Necromancer, and at one point he reached the same level as the guy who is his master at the school, and so he sends him to this other city, which was actually founded by this group of Necromancers called the Seven Pilgrims. And it turned out not all of them were originally Necromancers, some were like Death Domain clerics and whatnot, but basically they just created an entire city that over the years had sprung up. And there were certainly a lot of evil necromancers in that city, as one might expect. But a lot of them weren't. And a lot of them were, just people there to research and study and, who were interested in some of these dark arts that were kind of frowned upon or even forbidden in a lot of other places. And so they'd come here where it wasn't. And eventually he got to meet the guy who would become his later master and who was at that point the most powerful necromancer until Troy at least equaled, maybe even surpassed him. And it was just an interesting mission, I guess you could call it, or character arc for Troy. And like I said, this other guy, he really was just I want to understand everything, and death is one of the great mysteries. And that was kind of his philosophy, He didn't really care about power because he already had so much of it. He just wanted to, learn more and explore the realms of death and be this, interplanar traveler type. And he's a cool NPC, I thought. So for a lot of these, you're probably just going to go straight Necromancer. Even if you do want a multi-class, I would still not take more than 2 or 3 levels in any other class, because as a wizard, 9th level spells are just so potent. Not just Wish, I know I talk about Wish a lot, but all the 9th level spells in general. It's the gap between 8th and 9th is staggering. It's probably the biggest jump in power in the entire game, except for maybe the jump between 2nd and 3rd level spells. I mean, it is a massive gap. So in general, if I have access to 9th level wizard spells in particular, I don't want to necessarily give those up. And if I'm in a campaign that I think is going to go to high levels, you know, maybe even all the way to 20, I'm definitely not going to want to, you know, multi-class deep into a different class. That being said, I did think of one multi-class idea that I thought would be kind of fun. Now, unfortunately, we're going to be combining it with the Death Domain Cleric, which is from the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it's technically an NPC-only domain. However, if you talk to your Dungeon Master, he might agree to let you use it. I don't think there's particularly any more powerful than any of the other cleric domains, so I don't think it's an imbalancing type thing. And obviously the idea of being a Death Domain Cleric and a Necromancer go very nicely together. And it also kind of gives us a different role that you sometimes see in a lot of like video games and media and stuff. That being like the soul stealer, the person who siphons the life out of others to feed themselves. And you kind of get a bit of that as a Necromancer with Grim Harvest. But I think that the Death Domain Cleric is going to give us a bit more of that kind of thing as well, which I kind of like. So I wouldn't take more than 2 or more than 3 levels of Cleric. I mean, I might go only 2 even, but I think 3 is decent. If you want to go higher, I mean, you can. At level 6, you'll gain the ability to ignore creatures' resistance to necromantic damage. That can be pretty handy, you know. So I think it's worth considering, but I'm probably just going to go for 2 or 3 levels. Level 1, you're going to get proficiency in martial weapons. You're also, you know, going to have some better armor options because of multi-class and cleric. You're going to get a free necromantic cantrip. And the nice thing about this is that when you use that cantrip to deal damage, you can hit an extra target as long as it's within 5 feet. Now, one of the big problems I have with cantrips is they don't scale extremely well. Not that they don't scale at all. I mean, you know, it could be worse, right? But you know, where the fighter at high levels is going to be making 3 or even 4 attacks around, your firebolt or whatever is just doing those extra dice. You're not getting that stat bonus added every time. You're not getting weapon bonuses added every time. If that fighter has sharpshooter or great weapon mastery, or if it's a paladin dropping smites, they can be dropping those smites on every single one of those attacks until they run to spell slots in, you know, 2 rounds of combat. But whatever. But the point is that, you know, where the Warlock gets something like an Agonizing Blast, and they can add their Charisma bonus to their Eldritch Blast, thanks to Agonizing, they're still getting a lot of that scaling, but you're really not. So the ability to hit a second target suddenly makes your cantrips a lot more damaging, and that's something I really like. And Toll the Dead is an excellent cantrip for this, especially if you're able to, you know, pick targets that have already been wounded. You're looking at die 12s of damage. You know, it starts getting a lot more mileage out of it. So that's one nice advantage. At level 2, you're going to get your Channel Divinity. You can get Touch of Death. A melee strike does 5 plus W cleric levels in necrotic damage if you use your Channel Divinity. Now, you're not going to have a lot of Channel Divinities, and you know, you're not going to want to have a lot of wisdom on this. I mean, maybe you'll have like 16, might be the highest. I'd probably even just go with 14. But I think that if you wanted to be someone who, you know, can wear some like medium armor, for example, and maybe wants to throw down like a green flame blade or a booming blade every now and then, you could use that as a melee strike while also being able to use your Channel Divinity, get some extra damage in. And, you know, that's not so bad. I kind of like that idea. The other thing you're going to get from the Death Domain, which is going to be very nice, are your domain spells. At level 1, you're going to get False Life and Ray of Sickness. And at level 3, you'll get Blindness, Deafness, and Ray of Enfeeblement. Ray of Enfeeblement, sorry. I really like Blindness, Deafness a lot. It's unfortunate to target con save, but, you know, it's a concentration-less debuff, which is pretty rare overall, and I think it's a pretty good one. You could take it as a wizard, of course, but the fact that you have it always prepared as a domain spell is pretty handy. And the fact that you're going cleric means that you're not gonna, you know, your spell casting levels will still keep up fine. It's just that your overall, your wizard level is going to be delayed by a few. But I think it's a decent build. I think it could be a lot of fun to play, and why not? So anyways, those are my main thoughts on the Necromancer. Like I said, most people who play this class are just going to go with the Minion Mancer type style. You're going to have a lot of undead, you're going to animate them, you're going to use them to do all your stuff, and that's perfectly fine. But I did think that there were some other ideas in there that can easily be incorporated into the Necromancer. And like I said, you don't have to, do an entire build for those things. You can just add them into what you're already going to do on your Necromancer. So those are my thoughts on the class. Please feel free to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, leave me your comments. I would love to read about your Necromancers and, whether you've had playing one or have questions about them playing one. Or maybe you were a DM who had a Necromancer in his campaign and Necromancer kept screwing over all your plot lines by turning all of your undead into his thrall. That could be fun to read about too. So, thanks for everything, and I'll see you next time.